Hi, I want to present the sources for my recently published essay, Is Anything Real? So if you looked at some of the references, you might have picked up that this essay is based on the conversation between Avram Avinu and Ephraim and the instructions that Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Meraglim. In the conversation between Avram Avinu and Ephraim, Ephraim says to Avram, Eretz arba me'as shekel kesef bini ubeincha mahi. What is it? What is a land between me and you? And what I'm doing here is I'm reading this based on the analogy to the story by the Meraglim, where Moshe Rabbeinu also picks up with this kind of term, with this phrase, and he says, U'isem es aretz mahi. I want you to go and see mahi. What is the aretz? And he says, repeats, Umo ha'aretz. Is it this or is it that? Umo ha'orim. What is it this or is it that? So there's this idea about the aretz is defined by this word ma, what. And of course we know, based on Chazal, that when the pasuk says that Kalev went to Hebron on his mission of being a spy, he went to the Ma'aras Machpelah, to the place where the Avos were buried. So the story of the Meraglim clearly is picking up where this story left off. And that's very clear because if you think about it, and by the way, parenthetically, a lot of this discussion is printed in my book, Eretz Yaakov. I'll provide a link to that. And some of it is also going to appear in my forthcoming book, Ha'aretz Asher Eka. Some of it is in neither of those books. But the idea that the Meraglim story continues the burial of Sarah is very clear because Avram Avinu is the traveler, is the person who's given the mission, the mitzvah to travel and to go to Eretz Yisrael. Twice Avram Avinu was told, Lech Lecha, go off, once to the land of Canaan and once to Eretz Hamaria. That's to do the Akedah. So you would expect that after the Akedah story, Avram Avinu should finished his travels, came to this central place of holiness in Eretz Yisrael, the Makom HaMikdash. So at this point, it's very natural that Avram Avinu should in fact take possession or acquire or some other way take possession of Eretz Yisrael. And in fact, he does so in the following story, the story of purchasing the Ma'aras Machpelah. But instead of buying Har HaMoriah, the most holy place in Eretz Yisrael, the Makom HaMikdash, instead he buys a place of burial. So that suggests that there's something of a letdown here. Something did not quite achieve what it had to. And of course, as we know from Chazal, that is indeed the case because Chazal connected death of Sarah with the Akedah, and specifically with the Satan's role in the Akedah. The Satan, the Yetzer Hara, when he saw that the Akedah, that he didn't succeed in his attempts to frustrate Avram from doing the Akedah, he went and he told Sarah the news that Yitzchak almost was killed and she died. And what we're supposed to understand is that, something didn't quite work because the Satan is still active. And as we know from the Midrash of Chazal, the Satan has a very active role in the Akedah. In fact, it revolves around the Satan. The Satan is the one who instigated or incited Hashem to test Avram, insisted that Avram needs to be tested. Achar hadvar ma'ela, the Gemara says, as the Akedah story begins, after these words, after the words of the Satan who said to Avram, said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who said to Hashem, Avram Avinu has to be tested. After Avram was given this mitzvah to go and slaughter Yitzchak, the Satan also, in the Midrashim, comes along and tries to stop Avram Avinu. And then, when he didn't succeed in doing that, he came and he caused the death of Sarah. Now, the Satan here is active in his three roles. The Gemara Bava Basra says the Satan has three roles. Hu ha-Satan, hu Yetzer Hara, hu Malach HaMavis. He's the Satan, which means he tells God, he insists that people need to be tested. He argues against people. He is the Yetzer Hara. He tries to get people to do evil, to transgress the divine command. And he's the Malach HaMavis. He brings death. So he's active in the Akedah story in all of those three roles. He's the Satan who says to Hashem, we must test Avram. He's the Yetzer Hara who tries to stop Avram from doing his mitzvah of the Akedah. And he's the Malach HaMavis who, even though he didn't succeed in his first two roles, he still brings about the death of Sarah. Now, the fact that he brought about a death means that the Satan was not vanquished by the Akedah. He's still victorious. The continuation then of the Akedah story, the next story after the Akedah, the purchase of the Ma'aras Machpelah, indicates that actually Avram Avinu did not fully succeed in purifying the land or chasing the Satan from the land and sanctifying the Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land. He didn't really make the he didn't make it holy, he didn't succeed in making it holy, because the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, who parenthetically is always involved with the land. The Rambam says in the Moreh Nevuchim, the Satan is described in Sefer Iyov as being shot ba'aretz. He floats around the aretz. He's not a heavenly being, he's an earthly being. So the problem of earth, and we'll explain what this means very soon, very clearly. The problem of earth is that it's a satanic kind of realm, and you have to deal with the Satan. And here's what that means. It means something very simple. It means since earth, this is what I'm talking about in the essay, since earth is the place of constant change, nothing is permanent. That's what we call death. Therefore, there's this idea of evil, because as I explained in the essay, the fact that things cease to exist encourages us and induces us to think that, hey, there's good, but there's also evil. So that's why these two roles go together, the Malach HaMaves, the angel of death, and the Yetzer Hara, the one who insists that there is such a thing as evil. It goes together because it's the lack, which is death, which induces us to evil. Now, the other role of the Satan, as the one who insists that people need to be tested, I'm not going to talk about it. I didn't talk about that in the essay. I'm not going to talk about that here. But these two roles of the Satan are very typical, a characteristic of the earth. The earth is a place where there's constant change, as opposed to, let's say, the heavens, where things are the same, basically. From a certain perspective, nothing is interesting happening in the heavens. All sorts of things are happening there. Things are coming and going. People come and go. Civilizations come and go. Cities, buildings are built and crumble, as I explained. And so therefore, it's the place where apparently there's death. And therefore, people are inspired to evil. So Ephraim, whose name, Ephraim, has the word Ophir in it, dirt. He says to Avram, look, Sarah died, you're burying her, so Aretz Beini Ubein Mahi. Here you, Avram, are on this mission to sanctify a land, to sanctify the earth, and to insist that the earth can be holy, can be a place of goodness and life. But look, there's no difference between me and you, because you cannot pin down the Aretz. Aretz Mahi. What is it? You cannot pin it down and say this is what it is, because it's always changing. Your beloved wife Sarah went from alive to dead, and that indicates that we're all just afar, we're all just dirt. Everything comes from the dust, everything returns to the dust, as my name, Ephraim, symbolizes this anti-life stance. So that's first part of the essay right there. And Moshe Rabbeinu's response is, see, why am I saying Moshe Rabbeinu's response? Because Kalev goes to Hebron and he gets his inspiration from Hebron, which means that what we're dealing with, what we're struggling with in the story of the Meraglim, which is the story of can we have a holy land, is this story in Chayei Sarah. Can we in fact have some counter argument to Satan, or his representative here on earth, Ephraim? And the counter argument in Moshe Rabbeinu's mouth is, Uriisem es Aretz Mahi, is it this or is it that? Is it this or is it that? And he says 3 times, is it one thing or another? And what that tells us is the point I was making in the essay, that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying the solution to understanding what the Aretz is and to realize that there's no death is not to say, Mahi, look, I can't pin it down and say it's this but not that. It's to recognize that the Aretz is merely a what, and it's either this or that. Its very nature is that it can be one thing or it can be another thing. It's only what I call in the essay the place for instantiations of ideas. So the ideas, which are what we would call heavenly, the unchanging ideas, have this substrate or this blank slate upon which they can be written, and that's what the Aretz is. And when you understand the reason it's Mahi, when you understand that the Aretz is merely a what, and the Aretz can be this or that, it can be fertile or it can be raza, it can have bad soil, and that doesn't tell you that there's something wrong because you expect it to be A. Because if the Aretz would be A, then when it's B, you say that's death and that's evil. But the Aretz is A or B, X or Y. It's always one of 2 pairs, meaning to say it's always only a potentiality. And that's the response to Ephraim's argument, where he continues the Satan's work of saying, look, there's death and there's evil. Moshe Rabbeinu says if you want to understand the Aretz properly, see it as a ma, see it as a what. So the very words that Ephraim used can mean, well, what is it? It's not that. It's not what you thought it was. And that's death and that's evil. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, it's exactly what we thought it was, because we understand it to be a ma, to be a what, a mere potentiality.